your brain starts to process 4 different things it wants to know. Who am I, right? What do I want? How long will this take? And am I a threat, right? So your brain is making these judgments, and it doesn't need a novel worth of details.
All right, excellent. Hey, everybody, welcome to Path to Mastery podcast. And today we're with Mr. Chris Hadnagy. And I hope I said your last name right.
It's fine. It's a hard one. Hadnagy, but I'll answer to anything.
Yeah, I started off butchering your name. Not good, man.
It's all good.
Hadnagy. All right, well, we appreciate you doing this. I know we tried to put this together a while ago. It's been a few times. I picked up your book in, I want to say in like October. And I was just fascinated by it. And I read it, and I read it cover to cover. And I was just like, man.
Thank you.
You know, just being in sales, I think some of the application in here just works. I mean, it just makes sense. And so for people that don't know who you are, let me just, I'm going to read your bio. So Chris Hadnagy is the founder and CEO of Social Engineering LLC. During Chris's 18 years in the information security industry, he created the world's first social engineering framework, as well as hosted the first social engineering-based podcast. Chris is an adjunct professor. I probably didn't even say that word right. Is that the word, adjunct?
Yeah, adjunct professor. Yeah.
Adjunct. Okay, cool. For whatever reason, I never heard that word before, but cool. I'm learning new things today. So you're a professor at social engineering for an NSA Cyber School of Excellence at University of Arizona. Chris is also a well-known author, having written 5 books on social engineering. Chris's new book, Human Hacking, which we're talking about today, is Win Friends, Influence People, and Leave Them Better Off for Having Met You, was released in January 2021. So thanks for joining us, man.
Hi, I was muted, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Yeah, 100%. So first off, I mean, tell us about, human hacking. Well, tell us about let me, before we even go there. So my understanding is companies bring you in to find like flaws in their systems, correct? It's in their security systems. And you're able to break into different corporations and companies. So that's kind of your thing, your niche.
And it's mainly the human side of vulnerability. So we also do the computers and things, but we really focus on human vulnerabilities. So where they may be weak to like email-based threats or phone or physically breaking into buildings.
All right. You know what? For some reason, I feel like we are not getting, your audio is not coming through on,
Is that possible?
Not sure.
Okay, hold on.
No, it's not, I don't think it's on your end.
I think it's me. I think I'm muted. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I think that was my fault. I think I muted it trying to keep the volume down, and that might have been my problem.
Okay, cool. No, I'm wondering, usually I can get it to work through the Rodecaster either way, but that's fine. I'm glad we're able to pick it up. I noticed that there was no sound coming from you. So
sorry, everybody.
No, there's no problem at all. This seems to be working really well. So we'll keep this going. But yeah, so talk to us. How did you end up getting into that field? Like, how did you, I guess, become a hacker? Like what, right?
That's a great question. So when I exited high school and went into college, this will date me. We just started having modems in the internet, and I was what was called a phone phreaker, which was I loved to figure out how phones worked and like what kind of tones equaled quarters, and then you can make free phone calls and things like that. And I wrote something that now would be called a war dialer, which basically what it did is it dialed a phone number, it played a series of tones, it shut that phone line down, then it hung up and it dialed another number. And I did this and shut down Sarasota County's phone system for a day by mistake. Non-malicious. I was just doing some testing, and cops came to the school and they said, "Hey, who did that?" I went, "That was me." And they said, "Why'd you do it?" I said, "I was just testing. I didn't know it would shut everything down." They said, "Don't do it again." No trouble. They left, but the school got embarrassed and they kicked me out. So that was my 2-month college education right there. And I said, I'm fascinated. I want to know how these things work. I want to understand it. And that started my journey into trying to understand technology, understanding computers, understanding the internet, understanding hacking. Years later, after I tried my hand at so many different things, from being a chef to sales to a negotiator to window cleaner, everything under the sun, I ended up taking a course that was all about computer network hacking. And that really ignited in me a desire to be more into that space. And I ended up writing a framework, which is what we talked about here in 2009, that outlined how humans are vulnerable to scams and con men and things like that, which led to my very first book. And that book led to my company. So
amazing. And you had said earlier you focus more on the human side right now, the human side of it. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, right now, if we look at just the world scene, right, what's going on in the world, and I'm not talking about Ukraine, that's horrific, but looking at the world scene when it comes to crime, most crimes are conducted over the internet or the phone, through email, through websites, things like that. What we're seeing is that even though we can say, well, can't technology fix it? It's usually the human that's on the other side of that message that is vulnerable to the attack. So they send you an email saying, oh, thanks for your order for this television from Amazon. You click it, you think that your credit card was used, you log into your Amazon account or what you think is your Amazon account, and now you just gave your credentials to someone else. Now that hacker logs into your account, they get all your information, your address, your phone number, your credit cards, and now other attacks start to happen in your life. Understanding the psychology of how that works on a person, why they would fall for that. Why do romance scams work? Why do phishing emails work? That is the only way we can truly be protected. So I focus on why and how these things work, then practice them by auditing companies, and then working on defenses to help people be more secure.
I'm going to pivot a little bit because you mentioned phishing emails. Explain phishing emails and why do phishing? Because like me, I am like so paranoid. I will not click anything. I think everything's a scam. Like that's just that's kind of like my defense mechanism, I guess. Yeah. But what is a phishing email and why are they effective?
Well, a phishing email is basically an email that looks like it's coming from a reputable source, but it has other intentions. Those intentions being malicious most of the time, where they want you to either give money, credentials, financial information, or things like that. What we find, the real easy answer to why they work is the right emotional trigger at the right time, right? So like you said, you're really paranoid. So you think everything's an email. But if you were stressed,
I think everything's a phishing email. Yeah. Right? Phishing email, so scam or something. Yeah.
If you were overtired, if you were really stressed, you were having a bad day, and an email came in that just seemed legitimate enough, the lack of dopamine in your brain might trigger a risky response that allows you to take a risk and maybe click that email that you normally wouldn't, right? So what the phishers are banking on is that if they send out 100,000 of these, all they need is a 1% success ratio, because that still means a lot of money for them, right? So, and now we look at, let's say 2022, and what we've seen so far, just in a couple of months, is that they're increasing the use of social media in their phishing email. So they're actually looking at you. They're looking at David Hill's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever it is you have that's public. And they're using artifacts from that to gain trust with you, to get you to take that action. So
it's scary.
It's scary.
So, I mean, I use Coinbase, and I've gotten emails. I'm not familiar with Coin, but it looks like it's from Coinbase, but it's really not.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's insane.
Crypto scams are huge right now.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Because once you lose that money, there's no recovering it.
And once you lose those wallet keys, there's no recovering either. I did that back in 2017. So let me ask you this then. I want to jump to a story, and then I wrote down. I have some questions here I want to ask you from the book, and then, Gus, I appreciate you coming up in Clubhouse. Gus is up here, so Gus, if you can help me out, manage the stage if you can. Like, just if anybody wants to come up, if you see hands raised, you're welcome to bring people up. All right, good. All right, Gus, appreciate you, man. All right, so there was a story I was reading. I read in the book, and a lot of great stories. I read the book cover to cover, and then I picked it up again, yesterday, and I just to kind of refresh myself, and it reminded me like the story with with the smokers, like you couldn't get into this place, and then you went. Tell us about that. That's a great story.
So I actually had tried to get in the front door of this building through security, and I got stopped. The security did a great job. I wasn't on the list, so they weren't letting me through. So I'm like, well, I still got to try this. I got to try this. So I was walking
before
around.
we even go there, before we go there, tell people like what, because I don't think we really clearly explain what you do, but you actually, let's tell people.
So this company hired me to test their physical security infrastructure. So in essence, it's would security stop me? And if they would or would not, and I would still get in, would employees stop me? Like all the training they did to recognize people who don't belong, would they actually stop me? And we said, well, let's test that. So we came up with a pretext, which was pest control. That I had some pest control sprayers. We had the blue collar outfit, right? Khakis and a button-up shirt and a hat. And we walked in the front door and said, hey, we're from the pest control company, had a clipboard, signage, everything. We're here to do the spraying. And they looked at their sheets and they said, you're not on the list for today. You have to get on the list to be allowed in. So I'm like, well, no, we were sent, like, look at this work order. We had a whole work order, that we made up. And the security guard's like, sorry, if you're not on the list, I can't let you in. Now, he was really polite, but he's like, I just can't do it. You're not on the list. So we exited the building and I'm like, oh, darn, we got to figure out how to get in this place. So we're walking around the side and I see down on the sidewalk, there's a group of people smoking. Now, I don't smoke. I've never smoked. I don't even like cigarettes. And I'm like, but I know that if you can get in someone's tribe, that you can become part of that unit. So I'm thinking, how can I possibly do this? So I walk up to the group and I say, as a joke, hey, can I just stand here and breathe the fresh air? And a couple of people chuckle, but they look at me weird, like, is he being a smart aleck, right? And I say, hey, I just quit for like the 10th time. And that's really killing me today. And then they all laugh and they're like, yeah, I quit like 10 times myself. Well, I quit 9 times. And then one guy says, I quit quitting. And so now I'm part of the group. And then someone offers me a cigarette and I'm like, no, I promised my wife I'm really quitting this time. So I'm not even going to try it. But I said, maybe if I just stand here, maybe the smell will help, get rid of my cravings. And they're like, yeah, you can stand here. And they're like, so do you work here? I said, oh yeah, I'm just doing the pest control. And I stepped outside because I saw you guys smoking and I thought maybe it would just, give me a little bit of relief. And they're like, no problem, brother. And then we're just having a talk about what they do and what I do. And now it's time for their break to end. So they start walking towards the door and I just walk with them. And one guy uses his key card. He unlocks the door and he goes inside and he holds the door for me. And I'm like, thanks, man. And they're like, oh yeah. So where did you leave off? I'm like, oh, I got to go to floor 15. That's the sea level floor. And they're like, oh, cool. That's where I'm going. Come with me. Now I'm in an elevator with this guy. We just ride up the floor to 15 and bam, there we are.
So they bring you right into the building,
past security,
past everybody, but yet you couldn't get past this. It's insane.
Yeah.
And but ultimately what happened is because you became part of that tribe.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And how important is that in like a lot of people that listen to Path to Mastery podcasts are in the sales space, right? How does this fit into sales?
Yeah, this is a huge part of sales. So think about this. There's one of the principles that Dr. Cialdini, Robert Cialdini, he wrote the book Influence, and he studied how we influence people from a scientific level. One of the principles that he came up with was liking, the principle of influence called liking. And he has 2 like kind of tongue twisters. People like people who are like them. So the more similar we are, then the more we'll like each other because we feel like we must be good guys because we're similar. If we both like the same sports, or if we both had a similar watch or the same clothes or from the same area, that's going to make us like each other. And then the second one is people like people who like them. So if you like each other, like if I actually make you feel warm and friendly, then your brain releases oxytocin and you're going to like me and I'm going to like you. Now we mix that with his 8th principle that he just came out with, which is called unity. And unity is really all about the tribe mentality. Saying if I want to influence you, then the more I make you feel that we're a unit, that we're part of this tribe together, it's easier for you to trust me. So in the sales role, if we think about someone trying to positively influence someone to buy their product, then you buy things from people that you like, that you feel comfortable with. You buy things from people that you trust, right? I routinely will go into stores and see a sales guy that I've dealt with before that's always been honest with me and ask a question about a product. And if he tells me an answer, I just believe him because he's not lied to me before. I trust him every time he's given me a recommendation, right? I have this liquor store down here and I'll go in there and say, hey, looking for a new bourbon. What do you got? And he says, oh man, I tried this. It's just the stuff you like I just buy it. I don't even look at the price. I just buy the thing because he recommended it because I like him. He's always done me right. He's always given me good advice. And that kind of trust means he's going to make those sales. So liking and these principles of tribe mentality are huge when it comes to sales.
You know, the one thing too, you reminded me of too with the book, what was one of the big takeaways last time was people like people who like them.
Yeah.
And it makes a ton of sense, but it's not always common sense, I guess.
Yes.
That's right. Especially in sales, cause it's something I have to practice cause
that's hard. Sometimes we don't like people.
Yeah. There's some people you just kind of like rub you a little bit.
Yep.
You're just like, okay, but I still got to do my, so how do you, I don't know if how do you see, I'm trying to think of the right way to ask the question.
No, I think I get the question, right? So let me help you out. Another piece of science. Mark Bowden, who's a researcher into nonverbals, he has this great layout that talks about how people judge us instantly when they see us, right? Mm-hmm. So you and I never met before. We come on camera, and right away our brainstem does one thing, and it looks at each other, and it says, "I trust this guy," or "I don't." And sadly, it's based off of physical appearance, right? So, and it's not about sexual attraction or anything like that. It's just like, hey, you're a good looking guy. You're symmetrical. You look like you're healthy. So I go, my brainstem says, you know what? He's trustworthy because he's that kind of guy. He's got that face. Now my limbic system now just looks for proof of that. That's it. My neocortex just says, all you're trying to do right now is prove that what I just said is real, that you are a trustworthy guy. So I go, you see that hoodie he's wearing? That's something that a trustworthy guy. Oh, those glasses, he looks real smart. He's trustworthy. Oh man, I wish I had a goatee like that. This guy's trustworthy, right? And I do all these things that prove that I'm right. So from the sales perspective, how can you do this? If knowing what your client, before you even visit, before you even get in front of your target audience, knowing what things will make them feel that way. Right? If you're selling insurance and you're going to meet with farmers, maybe wearing a 3-piece suit with a Armani watch is not the way to go. Right? They may look at you and think this guy thinks he's above me. Right? Like maybe if you're going to visit a bunch of lawyers, that suit is the way to go because they need to be a little bit impressed. Right?
Yeah.
So thinking about your audience and saying, how do I need to look here? Because we know that judgment is going to be the first thing they see. Is your hair neat? Do you have food in your teeth? Right? Do you have anything stuck to your face? Is your eyebrows out of line? Like all these little things that right away will create a judgment could be taken care of before you even get in front of the target audience. And now you can have that first interaction be one that helps build that trust with the person.
I love that. Yeah. So, you're thinking, we talk about this every day. Just thinking through everything, from the clothes you wear to showing up on time, to your first words, to knowing every objection they're going to throw at you before they throw it at you. Right.
And here's what I tell people. It's not about what you like. It's about what the target will like the most, right? The target audience. So you may love that Armani suit. It may be your favorite thing in the world. But if you're going in front of your target audience and that is not the right thing to wear, then it is not about you. It has to be about them. Building rapport is always about the other person. It's not about you.
And by the way, this is not a hoodie. This is a sweater.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's all good. But I was thinking, should I put a jacket on or not? And I'm
man, that's a nice cardigan. That's what I should have said.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a nice sweater. Anyway, so I want to talk about pretexting now, right? Or pretext, because that is a really, really important part of the book. So tell us about pretext and how important that is.
Yeah. So I'll give it to you from the social engineering angle, but then also from the sales. So in social engineering, the pretext is basically the act that you're going to put on to make the target audience believe that you are who you say you are, right? So saying I'm the pest control guy, then my pretext is pest control, but that means my outfit, my clothing, my clipboard, everything that I have should prove to you that I'm the pest control guy. So I don't have to even say it. Right? I don't have to walk up and go, hey, Dave, I'm the pest control guy. When I walk in, you should be like thinking he's the pest control guy, right? Because you now look at me and that's what it looks like. Great. Okay. So pretexting in sales though, because you don't want to put on a fake act, right? So it's not, you don't, in the sales world, you don't want to be fake, because then if someone ever finds out, you kind of lost all that trust and rapport. So a pretext is merely, how do you want to present yourself to your target audience at that moment? So I kind of go back to the very thing we just talked about. You're selling insurance. You're going to be in front of a group of farmers. Well, then your pretext should be, I'm going to know about their struggles, their life. I'm going to dress in a way that's going to make them feel comfortable, that I don't look haughty. I'm going to approach them in a way that's going to really hit the things that they need to hear from this presentation. So that pretext is how you are going to present yourself to the person that you're about to interact with.
Now, is that in line with the four thoughts? Like when you meet so write this, who is this person? Walk us through that. Like those are the four in everybody's mind. You started talking about it, right? Yep. With, but like, what are those four questions that have to be answered?
I love that, because these things are so important. And we oftentimes, as the preparer, don't think about this. So if you're standing in a coffee shop and you notice I'm coming to talk to you, like you could tell that I'm walking towards you. I'm not aggressive. I'm not like angry, but you say, hey, this guy's about to come up and talk to me. Your brain starts to process four different things it wants to know. Who am I? Right? What do I want? How long will this take? And am I a threat? Right? So your brain is making these judgments, and it doesn't need a novel worth of details. The who am I? Maybe it's, I'm coming up to ask you, hey, is that your car out there? Because those lights are on, right? So who am I? I'm a guy going to ask you a question. What do I want? I want to know if that's your car because there's lights on that car. How long will this take? Not very long, because we're in a coffee shop. So as soon as you get your coffee, you can leave. And am I a threat? No, probably not, because I'm a nice guy looking to help someone with their lights on. So see, in something very simple like that, those four questions get answered right away. But sometimes what we forget to notice is things like our facial expressions, right? Like RBF. Some people really have it, right? Where when they're thinking, they kind of get that angry look on their face. And if you have that
BF, what's a BF?
Well, I don't know. It actually is a scientific term, but it's a little rude. It's called resting bitch face.
Oh, nice.
But, and like, I know many people who have this, male, female, right, have this. And when they get thinking, they kind of get this angry look, right? But they're not angry. They're just thinking. Yeah. Now, if we're like that and I'm walking up to you and I'm thinking, I need to talk to this guy, but I'm looking like this, when you see me, you go, oh, he's a threat. He looks angry, right? So understanding that you're going to ask these four questions, I need to approach you in a way that allows those four questions to be answered positively and nicely. So that way our interaction you can lower your shields and you feel okay in communicating with me.
I love it. Yeah. I remember years ago, I was auditioning for this, to be a trainer at my past company. And the first couple auditions, I didn't make it through. And then I think it was the third audition, this guy, John, I can't think of his last name right now, but he came up to me and he was just like, dude, just smile. He's like, the material, just smile. You know what I mean? And it was just, and it just really impacted. And I swear to you, from that day on, I smile. Even sometimes I tell it, I'll smile when I even probably shouldn't be smiling sometimes, but it certainly makes a difference.
It does. It makes a difference when people look at your face. If you're worried and nervous and tense, they don't know why. So all they feel is that same emotion you have: worry, nervous, or tension. So smile, small head tilt can make all the difference in the world.
So I work with a lot of people that do cold calls, and cold calls are calling people you don't know, or in many cases, people they're just not expecting your calls. How do we soften that for people listening? Because I know a lot of people get really hung up on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. There's a study called Enclothed Cognition, and it talks about the way that our body language, our facial expressions, and even our clothes change our vocal tone and how it can affect our psychology. So I tell people, because we do a lot of phone calls in my industry too, in my business, and I tell people, dress the part, even though they can't see you, right? So you're working from home, doesn't mean you can be in your pajamas, right? Because that's going to affect the way you handle that call. Sit up, sit up when you're about to make that call, and smile, because a smile actually changes the tone of your voice as opposed to a frown. So, okay, those three things, let's just say start with them, right? That can help you with cold calling. Then the second thing, depending, again, this comes back to your pretexting idea, the pretexting conversation. Think about your target audience. If I'm cold calling people in New York City, they want me to get to the point right now.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want me to be talking about the weather and how's your family and all of that. They want me getting to the point, like, hey, I'm Chris. I'm calling you because I want to talk to you about this, this, and this, right? They're going to appreciate that. If I'm calling people, let's say in, Louisville, then they may want a little conversation.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm over here in Orlando. Like, how's the weather today? Is it cold where you're at? You're like, oh yeah, it says, well, I'm Chris. I'm calling about this. They may want a little warm up conversation, right? So cold calling, you have to really plan. Again, it's not about you. You got to think, who am I calling? Where are they from? What is going to be my ask? And then planning, and not scripting, because I'm really against scripts, but planning that conversation out so it has the most impact on the person that you are going to be talking to.
Interesting. So I'm going to, we have some people in Clubhouse right now listening. We appreciate you. You're in the Breakfast with Champions Club. And please do us a favor, follow the club. We're going to continue launching podcasts in here. I want to know if anybody has any questions, and Gus, if you can help us bring some people up. If anybody has any questions, just simply raise your hand, and we'll definitely bring you up. And Gus, if you have any questions, certainly you're welcome to jump in as well. And I do have to, something that you just said though, I have to ask you about this, because I am a scripts guy. And let me just, before we go into it, I believe it starts with a script, but then you internalize it. Good. And then you can get away from it, right? I mean,
I'm perfect with that. What I don't like is when people just read it, right? You ever been on those calls, like you call your cell phone company and you have a big problem. There was a charge and you don't understand why, and you need help, and the person just doesn't help you. And then at the end, they go, thank you for calling AT&T. I hope you have a great day. And it's like, I'm angry. Do not read your script to me, right? So I think writing it out is fine, because you may need that. But then, like what you said, internalizing it, making it your own. So when you and I are talking on the phone, it sounds like you're actually having a conversation with me. You're not reading something from a piece of paper.
Yeah. Do you have another story you can share? What's one of your favorite stories, like where you're able to kind of break in? And then I have a few more questions after that, but where you're able to kind of get into some place you weren't supposed to get into.
One of my employees and I, we flew to Jamaica, country of Jamaica. We had to break into 3 banks in Jamaica. And I definitely stand out in Jamaica. So I'm like, this is going to be a hard job, right? And we get to our very first bank, and the security. So the whole bank parking lot is surrounded by a fence with barbed wire. You drive in, you park, and then the security are all these guys on dirt bikes driving around with shotguns on the side of their dirt bikes. And I'm like, oh boy, like we got to go break in this place, right? So my friend and I, my buddy and I, were sitting there. We're like, okay, how are we going to get past security? So we actually paid a local guy to go in the front door and to just have a conversation with the security guard about how he can get a job at the bank. Like, hey, are you hiring? Kind of things like that. We gave him $20. We said, just go in there, have this conversation, ignore us when we walk in. So he's having a conversation with the security guard. I grab my cell phone and I say to my guy, Ryan, I said, just follow me in. And I make believe I'm talking. So on the phone. So as I'm entering the building, I have a clipboard and I'm like, yeah, John, we're here already. We're coming upstairs to finish the audit. And I'm just saying this loud as I can. And we walk right past security. They don't even stop us, right? So we get in through the metal detectors, everything. We go upstairs and we act like we belong. We just walk. No one stops us. So we get upstairs and we have no clue where we're going. And I see this woman walking towards us, kind of right past us. And I just turned to follow her. And she goes to this door and she scans her key card and she goes in. And as we're walking in, there's a sign that says ATM testing room. So we go in and there's like hundreds of ATMs in there at this bank that they're all testing and doing software updates. And she kind of turns around and she goes, "Excuse me, you can't be in here." And I said, "Oh, yes, we're doing a PCI audit. We're supposed to be here." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then she just walks away. So now we're in this unit and we're taking pictures of all the ATMs. We're crawling around inside these giant machines. No one's stopping us. We're in there for maybe like 20 minutes. Then we say, "Okay, let's get out of here before we get caught." So we exit and we go down the hallway and there's this double door that's locked. And I just walking real slow and I hear somebody coming through it. So I kind of speed up and I hold the door. This woman comes through. I go, "Let me get the door for you." So she's like, "Oh, thank you. You're a gentleman." And I'm like, "No problem." And I let her out and then we go in. So we walk in and it's the call center, the bank call center. So we try to get down this one hallway and there's all these desks and people sitting there. And there's one desk next to this woman that's the computer's on, but it's locked. So I say to this woman, "I need you to put your password into this computer." And she goes, "My password in that computer?" I'm like, "Yes, please do it." And she's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because we're doing a PCI audit and I need to be logged in this computer." And she goes, "Okay." So she puts her password in the computer, logs me in. Ryan sits down. He starts hacking the whole network, right? Then this woman comes up and she's the manager and she goes, "Who are you two and what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, we're doing a PCI audit." And she goes, "Okay." And she walks away. And I'm like, "Man, we are like, this is just too easy." Right. So like 5 or so minutes later, another woman comes up and she goes, "One of my managers says you're here to do a PCI audit. Who is your contact in the bank?" And I said, "Oh, we don't really have a contact. Just somebody sent us over to finish up the audit." And she's like, "Come with me." So she takes us and she brings us down to security. And she says to the security guards, "These people are here, but they don't have a bank contact." And the security guard says, "No, I saw them come in." And she's like, "Well, you might have seen them come in, but they don't have a bank contact." She goes, "You take care of them." And she leaves. So now the security guard is sitting there and he goes, "Well, who's your bank contact?" And I'm thinking, you know what? Give me a second. I'm going to get him on the phone. So I pick up my cell phone and I call the company who hired us, the locals, right? And I just start saying like, "Hey, Dave, this is Chris over at the bank. They need to talk to someone from the bank about our PCI audit today." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, "Can you talk to security?" So I hand the phone off and he says his name. That is this guy from the bank. And the security guard goes, "Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." And then he goes, "Well, what are they supposed to do?" And he says, "Just take them wherever they want to go." So the security guy gives my phone back and he goes, "Hey, where do you need to go?" I said, "We got to go to the server room." So the security guy just takes us to the server room, unlocks the door, lets us in. That was probably the craziest job that we had because we were all over the place and we tricked security. We were in every part of that bank. That was and then we exited safely, didn't get shot, got back in the van, drove away and went for a drink because we were stressed.
That sounds like a fun job, man. It's super interesting. So I know when I asked if anybody had any questions earlier, Gavin raised his hand. So Gavin, do you have a question for Chris? Gavin's in Clubhouse.
Great advice, thank you. I was just going to say, I'm very much like you when it comes to scripts. I prefer to go down the road of dynamic assessment of where you finding out what the client wants first. Where I'm going with this is, I was called in to help a company do sales a while ago, and they've got this script and they wanted a perfect script. And instead ring up and throw them off guard. I think it was like a photocopier company or something like that. And they were basically saying, "Look, we're ringing you up, we can offer you a cheaper service." And I said, instead, ring them up and say, "Hey, what do you prefer, Airwolf or Knight Rider?" And they're like, "What?" And you kind of throw them off guard and catch them unawares, and therefore whichever you can turn around and go like, "Oh, we're going down there, we're having a vote here in the office and half of us are on Airwolf, half of us on Knight Rider, which one do you prefer?" And of course, whichever one they pick, you go, "Yay, we win, your team Airwolf or your team Knight Rider or whatever." And you've built that instant rapport and got them on side, and it worked for me. Have you ever heard that kind of thing being used? Have you ever used anything like that yourself?
Yeah, so that's a great question, by the way. So I want to say yes, I've used it before and I've heard it being used. I'm going to give you the pro and con. If you have a good relationship with the with the potential client, and you can pull that off where they know you kind of joked with them before, it gives you a great reason to now be in front of their face again, right? So it gives them a great reason. If you are not at that point, like if they're kind of like, yeah, we're not really sure about using you, and they're kind of hemming and hawing, and you do that, they may see through it as a ploy. Now, regardless, my advice would be that once you do that, don't go right into a sales pitch, right? So you do that, you ask them, hey, which one do you like better? And hey, we won, man, you helped us win, thank you. And be like, hey, I'm going to reach out to you next week to talk about the SOW or whatever. Don't go into a sales pitch right there and then, because they'll quickly see that as a ploy for getting them on the phone. So you kind of leave them feeling better for having met you. You make this joke, everyone laughs, everyone finds it fun, but then you go right back to, I'm here to, I'm just going to call you back next week and we'll talk about the actual work.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very much like the theory of putting the sign in the window and going for put a small one in first, and then later on going back to the bigger one.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I actually used to do pen testing myself a few years ago.
Oh.
Got into a big building in London here, and sorry, the phone rings. Not now. Yep, not now. Sorry, someone on the other line for me. Apologise. So I used to do this pen testing. We got into this big building in London, and prior to getting in, what I did is I got onto their website. I got their logo, their details, their phone number, and I actually forged a letter from the CEO saying that I got permission to be there as part of the pen test. And I got into the building using human error, and fair play to security, they did actually come and find me on the 8th floor. And when they did, I showed them this fake letter, and the security guy goes, "Oh, okay, thank you," and off he went. Just me to it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've done that one a couple times.
I'd love to link up and share stories sometime, Chris.
Yes.
I'll send you a message on Facebook later.
All right. Awesome. Give him a follow here. By the way, everybody in the room, make sure you give Chris a follow. And also don't forget to follow the club Breakfast with Champions and Mr. Glenn Lundy, who created this amazing club. So I have made a huge error, Chris, and hopefully it works. Just realize I'm probably sound different right now, right? Does my audio sound a lot different? Yeah, because I was not actually connected to the audio on the Rodecaster, but we were talking.
Yeah, I heard the guy through here too.
Yeah, so it's good. We'll see how it works out. Also, David just popped in as well. David Morrell. He just had and who's the guy? I was listening to it earlier. I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote the book on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin standard.
Dr. Saifuddin Ammous. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an awesome interview, man.
Yeah, that one was fun.
I'm about halfway through, and I was just listening on the way back from the gym. But yeah, do you know who Christopher is? Christopher with Human Hacking?
No, I'm just getting up to speed now.
Okay.
Sounds super interesting. I came in halfway through his story, and I'm kicking myself for missing the beginning of the room.
Well, I want to get you two connected anyway, because David has a great podcast, and you guys should probably connect and maybe get Christopher on the podcast. So,
for sure, yeah, absolutely.
So, Chris, let me ask you this. I've got two more questions I wanted to ask you, and then if we got time, certainly we'll open it up. Number one is with regards to this whole process you do. What do people sometimes think of it as, like, because I was reading in the book, and some people can think of it as like manipulation and such, right? Do you get a lot of that, and how do you deal with that? Like when you tell people, like some of the things you're doing, like with the smoking or the security guard, some people can think, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. That's manipulation. Yep. So how do you address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, for my job, right? I'll answer this in two different ways. For my job, when we get a client, we generally have a conversation about that the results of our work should not get anyone fired. They should be used for educating people, right? Because if you fall for something and they fire you, the next person they replace you with is just as vulnerable as you were, because they're human. So just finding their vulnerability. So we always encourage education is the way to go, not firing. Then secondly, we utilize pretexts that have the ability for education. So we don't use flirtation, we don't use threats, we don't use fear, because we don't want someone afterward to be like, Well, how was I supposed to know? Right. We always use ones like in the case of where I walked up to those smokers, the education was that no one, like even as a visitor, I would have had a badge. Security would have given me a badge. So if they said to me, hey, before we let you in, can we see your visitor badge? And if I didn't have one, they would say, oh, you got to go around the front and get one. Right. Then they would have done. So it's just simply following a process that would have stopped that. Right. So so that's what I normally do in my work. Now for real life, I shouldn't say real life, for everyday life. The reason I wrote that book that you have was because I wanted to teach people how to use these skills every day, right? How to use these skills that I'm talking about that I use to break into buildings, but to use them in everyday life. And here's one of the major rules why the end of that title is leave them feeling better for having met you. People need to feel empowered to have a choice to say no. When you take away the choice, then it's manipulation. Right. So if I'm trying to get something from you, right, like I tell a story in the book of how we got free upgrades on flights. And in that story, I actually gave the woman a choice to say no to me. I said, I probably can't afford it. It's too big. It's too much. So she could have said, yeah, it's really expensive. I can't help you with that. By taking away her choice and saying something like, oh, we're so depressed. We were at this funeral and it was so hard. And my family, my friend of the family died and it's just been so hard. And this can really help us. I'm using guilt. And now if she says no, she's hurting this little girl and my wife and me. And that is manipulative. But by giving her a choice to empower her to say no to me, and there's no repercussions for her saying no. If she makes the choice to help me, then she's doing it and she can feel better for having helped me. And if she can't for real, then she doesn't have to feel guilt for not helping me. So you can use all these skills, but just remember, by giving people that choice, you empower them then to not feel manipulated.
I love it. I've been in sales a long time, 37 years. I train and teach salespeople. And, I think, sometimes we have to help people along, not for my interest, for their best interest, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people need a nudge. And I'm not saying manipulate, but I feel like sales gets a bad name because there are so many people. I don't know if it was in your book, and was it you that talked? I'm not. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was your book. Talked about like the car salesman, like the used car salesman getting a bad rap. Was that in your book?
Yeah, I did. I talk about one of the stories with the car salesman.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think that is something that how does somebody, I guess, weigh, like where's the line between like helping somebody along to make the right decision and I guess pushing them or being too pushy or manipulate, right? I don't want to add manipulation because I just don't agree with that. I think if it's manipulation, that's a lack of integrity. But I think sometimes, salespeople get a rap for being too pushy or too aggressive, but yet I've had people where I've helped people make a decision and then they've thanked me down the road. Like, thank you so much, because I wouldn't have made that decision without your help.
So I think it's about what your intentions and motivation are. See, it comes back to the thing I said in the very beginning. If it's about them, then it's not about you, then you're not manipulating, you're influencing. Right. So I'll give you an example. Over when COVID kicked out, I was really unhealthy. I was overweight. I was just not working out. I was lethargic. And I have people telling me all the time, you need to get healthy, Chris, you need to get healthy. People would paint pictures, oh, and I have a heart attack before I'm 50 and all of this stuff. Not the right motivators, right? It's fear. But then somebody came to me who had the similar situation, overweight, and they lost a bunch of weight. And they came and they said, hey, I want to tell you something I'm doing. Like, I just got this trainer. This guy's amazing. Look at these pictures of me. And I'm like, whoa, Dave, you look amazing. What the heck? How did you do this? And he starts telling me. Now, he's influencing me the whole time to start taking the same journey he took. But he's not saying, you need to do this because you're going to leave your kids and you're going to have no dad, no fear, right? And there was nothing in it for him, right? He wasn't making money off me. He was doing it because he really wanted to help me. And it was the perfect way of doing it. So if I'm coming to you and I know that my product or my service can really help you, I know what I give to my clients is really the best thing for them, then I have to make it about them, not about me. Because if it's about me, people feel that. And then they're like, well, you're just trying to sell me because you're trying to manipulate me to make money. But if it's about you, then even at the end, I may realize, hey, maybe I'm not the right fit, right? I've had that happen. I'm sure you have too. clients have come to me. I've worked with them. I'm building out a quote. And then at the end, I'm like, yeah, we're actually not the right fit for you. Maybe you're too small, or we don't have the right services. Let me help you find someone that can do what you need. Right. And I've had people come back to me years later and go, man, you were so good and honest with us back then. We want to use you now for this other thing. Because it's that, so I think it's really about your intentions and how you approach it and making it about them.
I love it. All right. Do we have anybody on Clubhouse? Anybody else want to ask a question of Chris?
Can I expand on what he just said?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that cool? Yeah, no, a super good point. I agree with that. I think in sales, especially in real estate, like one of the things we lose sight of sometimes is that we're in the deal closing business. Like we actually have to close deals to make income. So intention is good, but I think reading personality types is important too. I think some people need to be pursued a little bit more. They need to be closed a little bit harder. You need to apply the pressure more. Some you just need to, as you were mentioning, just back off and let them make the decision. So I think it comes down to, and again, I apologize for missing the first half of the room. We may have covered that, but it comes down to the actual personality type, or what is motivating your client, right? So I don't want to say we manipulate, but we definitely got to apply pressure at times. I really believe that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I tell the story in the book about a car salesman who got me to sign a contract. And, the first guy tried by throwing all these things in and using the let me talk to my manager. And the second guy got me to where I wanted in my deal. He got me to exact price I wanted, but then he said, look, if I'm not going to hold this. So if you want it, you're going to do it today. So I got what I wanted, but now he applied some pressure back to me with saying, if you walk out of here, I'm not going to give you this deal later. So I had to say yes to it then. So he got what he wanted out of it too, but he didn't threaten me. He didn't manipulate me, but he drew the line in the sand. And once I got to where I wanted, it was now this line in the sand. If I cross over it, I'm going to lose the deal. So I thought, I think you're 100% right that sometimes pressure does need to be applied to motivate people in the right direction.
Pressure. Yeah. Urgency. Urgency. Yeah.
I like that. That's a good word.
So, what's the best way for people to get, I'm holding up the book here, Human Hacking. And what's the best way to people to get a copy of the book? Also, if they want to get in touch with you, Christopher, what do you have going on?
So you can get it on Amazon or any bookstore, really. They sell it anywhere. There's also a website called humanhackingbook.com that they can go to, and they can interact with me there, or they can follow me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great platform. I'm on there a lot, so they can find me there and connect with me. I'm really good at usually talking to people on that platform. So they can shoot me an email from the website, and I'd be more than happy to connect with people and have a conversation. So there's many different ways that they can follow me, and we can chat.
Awesome. This was super fun. And I think the one thing we didn't talk about, which may be the most important thing, is rapport. Right? Like in the book, how important is it to have rapport with somebody? And for this to be effective, you have to find rapport.
Yeah.
And how is there a way you can create that almost instantaneously?
Yeah. So, even though we didn't maybe say the words, we talked about it when you asked the question about the four main things that need to be answered first, right? So you think about it, every one of us is guarded to an extent. And if I can answer those four things, who are you? What do you want? How long will this take? And am I a threat? In the first few seconds of our interaction, I'm going to be able to build rapport with you, right? If I don't answer, if I only answer three of them, then there's still going to be a question in your mind, and that's going to hurt my ability to gain rapport. If we think about rapport as from a chemical, from a psychological perspective, it's linked to a molecule called oxytocin. And oxytocin is the very chemical that's released during intimate moments, during moments with your friends, during a mom when she's breastfeeding a baby. This chemical is what creates bonds in between humans. So if I answer those four questions and I do exactly what you said before, I have a nice smile on my face, and I approach that person with the who, what do I want, how long, am I a threat, then I'm going to be able to build rapport with you. And it just works like magic.
I love the questions. So number one is, who is this person? Number 2, what does this person want? Number 3, how long is this encounter going to take? Which is me. That's like the first one I go to. And then, is this person a threat? That's awesome. And that's happening in people's minds.
And let me answer number 3 a little more, because that is so important. It has to be realistic, right? If I walk up to you and I say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? That's not good enough to answer that question, because I've already taken up more than a second. Right. So, but if I'm realistic, if I walk up to you and I say, hey, listen, I'm new to town and I'm looking for this restaurant I'm supposed to meet somebody at. Can you help me for a minute? And then you go, okay, I just answered those 4 questions. I said, who am I? I'm a guy that's new to town. What do I want? Help finding a restaurant. How long will it take? 1 minute. So now the number 4, you can answer that. Oh, this guy's not a threat. He's just going to be here for a minute of my life. Now I turn my phone around and I go, hey, this restaurant, can you tell me how to get there? And you're like, oh yeah, it's just go around, bam, bam. Now we're done. Right. And now I live up to my social contract with you and I walk away and you go, that was a nice interaction. So
no, this is so brilliant. So I'm just thinking about like some of the lines we use, the greetings with people. And it's this without it. So my name is right.
Yep.
The reason for my call is, and just to make sure I'm not wasting your time. Right. It's like, and then I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. And it's awesome. All right. Well, listen, I just want to say I appreciate you, man. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
You spent an hour with us, and I would encourage everybody to go pick up this book. This has been one. I'm a sales guy. I'm a sales guy at heart. I've been selling my whole life. When I picked up, I had Chris Voss on my podcast a few years ago.
Great, isn't he?
Chris Voss's book had so much impact on me. And with sales and strategy, and I still use his, have I got you at a bad time, all that stuff. And this book here has probably had the most impact. It's same as that, the same, if not even more, when it comes to sales. So I would encourage everybody to go pick up this book, Human Hacking. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's going to help you become a better salesperson. So that said, I thank everybody on Clubhouse. Give Christopher a follow, please. Also follow the people that came up to the top, and follow the Breakfast with Champions Club, because we're going to continue doing this. And those guys, Glenn Lundy and them, run some phenomenal rooms. And Chris, I'm just going to throw it back to you for the last question is, with everything we listened to today, I mean, what's the one thing you want everybody to walk away with from this conversation today?
Thank you. That's a really nice thing to end on. I think one of the things that we can work on just as humans, as a society, is learning how to communicate with empathy more. We seem to have lost that, especially over the last 2 years. I mean, look at what happens on the internet. People feel empowered to say the most horrific things to people and to be so horrible to how they talk to other humans. And we've lost that, just that normal human empathy that should be there. Things that we would never say to each other face to face, people say on the internet, and it just seems so bad. So my thing that I always tell people, work on building that empathy back, getting that into your daily habits, because that is going to make all the difference in your life if you can communicate with people with empathy.
So important. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here today, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.